guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. It's Tuesday, 22nd of September. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Rough, Darren Jackson and Hugh MacDonald are here with me on the show. If you want to, you can like, share and follow us across Facebook, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And we've got something special for you right at the end of the show. I'll be reading out some of the lucky winners of our T-shirts as well. And on the show today, we're going to ask that question: can Scottish football survive the next 6 months with no supporters in? And over and above that, as I look at our menu, can we expect 4 Scottish clubs in European competition on Friday morning after they've all played on Thursday evening? You can give us your viewpoint on that. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, has been speaking. It has an impact on our game. Elsewhere, are we getting closer to Alfredo Morelos leaving Rangers? And over and above that, as Scott Brown says, European football is vitally important to Celtic. If you're a Celtic fan, would you sacrifice 10 in a row if you knew Celtic were going to win the Europa League? Just a few of those little teasers to get you in the mood for what we've got coming. So, first and foremost, I was hanging on her every word, Roughie. Nicola Sturgeon pops up there and basically says that any fans in the stadia will be pushed back beyond October 5th. We don't know what date that is. Boris Johnson had mentioned that some of the restrictions are going to be in place for the next 6 months. Nicola says she will review everything over a 3-week period, but it's worrying times for Scottish football.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think we're all hoping it's not going to be 6 months. I think 6 months would cripple a lot of clubs. I think it was muted a wee bit there that some clubs want to just bow out this season, because I don't think any of them can afford to pay players for 6 months without any income coming in. So there's the worrying times ahead. The next couple of weeks, I think there'll be stories flying about all over the place, or certain clubs, how they're dealing with it, how they're not dealing with it. I'm hoping the 6 months is a frightener to everybody to really get their act together, and hopefully it might be 2 or 3 months. But fans coming into the ground is a huge financial disaster. I was telling Hugh before we come on, us at Partick Thistle are ready, budgeting ahead for 6 months, looking at the financial situation and wondering how we can get through this. So I know we're run pretty well, but I'm sure there's a lot of clubs won't be run as well as what we are.
And Darren, the FA in England has just released a statement saying it's going to be dire consequences for English football if they can't get fans back in, even in smaller numbers. If they're in trouble, we're all in trouble.
Yes, Peter. Obviously, it's become a disaster, and I know they've started with 1,000 fans, but for the smaller clubs, they don't even get 1,000 fans. That's a lot of people to get in. They were hoping maybe 500 to start with, the lower down to get in and start earning some money. For the bigger clubs, it probably start with 1,000, then hopefully go to 2,000, then 5,000, then you see where you go from there. So it's a huge blow to everybody, Peter. But I think it is a reality check that I think we've taken a foot off the gas here and totally underestimated that there was going to be a second spike. I can remember speaking to someone down south, a coach down south, sorry, and he said the doctor said there'll definitely be a second spike. And this was a couple of months ago, and it's coming to fruition, and it's a disaster.
Well, I don't want to even suggest for a minute any kind of a moral high ground here, Hugh, that we were well aware of it on this programme, but we've been consistent on it. I looked at it all those months ago, listening, reading up, and constantly on this programme we have said that it was going to be really, really fortunate if we could get fans in before the end of this year.
Yep, that's been a consistent viewpoint of this programme. I don't think you have to be a virologist to work out what's going on. If this is a disease that's contagious and it's passed between people and it's passed because of contact between people, as soon as you take the brake off and contact increases in whatever way, you're going to get a spike, and that's what's happened in France and Spain and other places, and there's no reason why it shouldn't have happened here, and it's come to pass. I think it's becoming close to pretty catastrophic now for Scottish football, though, Peter, because now's the time where people should be looking at their reserves, and I mean that in cash reserves, I mean that in financial reserves. And clubs don't have that. And if you've got outgoings as in wages and no incomings as in revenue from fans, it's easy to look at the just like the results of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give as many people a mention on YouTube and Facebook as I possibly can. We're delighted that you watch us on all sorts of formats. We're on, of course, Twitter as well, at PLZ Soccer. And lots of people, if they can't get it live, watch it in their comfort of their own home. Although you wouldn't be able to watch it with many of your pals now, because in Scotland, you're just not allowed to visit anybody in another household. That's just one of the things that we've got to do, as well as wash your hands, as well as keep your social distancing on this. And the bad news for all of us is we're not getting any fans in for test sites. So that is a blow, I have to say. Michael Climby says, good afternoon, Peter and the team. Watched the PLZ video last night on YouTube. Great video. Pleased that we got a great turnout in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Well done to everyone. Thank you, Michael. That's very kind of you to mention that. The video is up on YouTube. It's going out across all the social media this evening. So if you haven't seen it on YouTube, you will get a chance to see us all just basically explaining what football means to us. This is why you should join us on the football family. And with that in mind, Ailey Conway is a big Hibs fan. She was a lovely girl at 10 years of age with her mum, Lisa. They watched the show. She got her photograph taken up there at Northbridge in Edinburgh. So we sent her out a little goodie bag with a prize in it for her. And as far as Matthew McEwen in Dumfries, we'll be sending something out to Matthew. He's a Rangers fan. We just picked these out at random. So, apologies if some fans are not represented in this little batch of winners, but we will be throwing out some really good gifts to lots of people who like, share and follow us and subscribe as well. One of them is Matthew McEwen, who's out there in Dumfries. So well done to you, Matthew, a Rangers fan. We'll be sending something to you. Fiona Docherty's in Bishop Briggs. She's a Rangers fan. There's a recurring theme here, I have to say, but they're all random picks. Stephen Harkins, who's in Perth, Western Australia. And you'll never guess, Roughie, he's in Western Australia. He's a Rangers fan, so we're sending him out a prize as well. There was it was one of those days when there was a lot of people who happened to be Rangers fans. So, and Darren Fields, who's out there in New York, Darren is a Celtic fan, and we'll send something out to New York as well. Lots of people from home, lots of people from further afield will be getting prizes courtesy of PLZ Soccer. Join us, join the football family, and we'd love to hear from you. With the news coming out from the First Minister, which has huge implications for business, huge implications for sport, of course, in the near future, Hugh MacDonald, no Old Firm fans for the first Old Firm game, certainly no fans in for the playoffs in the Euro 2020 qualifier.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, even before today's announcements and today's events, I think hopes were really dwindling of anybody being at the Celtic Rangers game and anybody heading to Hampden as well. So not a great shock there. I think the biggest thing, Peter, is I think the biggest worry for me was when Boris Johnson was talking about, that a lot of measures would go on for 6 months. Now, he didn't specifically mention football and he didn't specifically mention sports and stadiums, but 6 months really provokes a huge intake of breath, because if there's no revenue stream coming in for Scottish football for 6 months, I mean, it is catastrophic. It's as simple as that. It will be catastrophic.
Yeah, let's everybody actually, pays heed to the restrictions. And of course, some people just go off air because they're not happy with it. That's right. Roughie. That's Roughie with his new Wi-Fi, I have to tell you, which is, I'd be kicking the router off the wall if it cuts out as much as Roughie's does. Patrick McManus says, so where will all the Celtic and Rangers fans be heading on the 17th of October? You can't go to anyone's house, so I guess it'll be at the pub. That will be wonderfully safe, says Patrick. Well, that's the key as well here on this one, because there are going to be huge fines, Darren, handed out to people who, get to places where it's unsafe and it's too busy. The one thing that the pubs will be doing is they will be locked tight on the rules and regulations because they want to try and survive, even though some of them will struggle to make profits.
Of course, Peter, we'll have to look at the First Minister's under pressure because she's trying to look after the nation, well, our country, health-wise, but the economy as well. So she's caught in between two stones, and it's really hard what to do. They'll shut the pubs at 10 o'clock where they're going, but people will just go out earlier. The Old Firm game would be probably a 12 o'clock kickoff, so they're out early till 10 o'clock. So it's what you really do, Peter. Do you shut them down, which the economy goes again, which we can't afford to do. So there's no right and wrong. It's just trying to do what's best for everybody. As I say, health-wise first and foremost, but then the business and the pubs and the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Roughie, the router that you managed to get from China seems to be a problem at the moment for you. I'm not sure. Do you need some dilithium crystals or a flux capacitor to help you out here?
No, Addy, you'll know how all this works. And maybe it's just trying to feed its way into whatever it's feeding itself into. But
yes.
Well, there must be a word for it. There'll be a word for it somewhere.
There will be.
Just put it this way: it's no playing the ball, and if it doesn't get its act together, it's going out the window in a minute.
Well, that's the great thing about it, because when the eventual workman comes through there, the technical operator, Roughie, and when you say to him, it's just not feeding itself into the thing that it's supposed to be feeding itself into, he'll know exactly what you're talking about. And Isabel Gardner has summed it up beautifully. She says, Peter, PLZ has been my sanity for these last few months. I'm a lowly Hearts fan. I do not understand, Isabel, why you would suggest for a minute you're a lowly Hearts fan. You're a Hearts fan. There's no lowly about it. And the family have taken me to the restaurants at Tynecastle, which are amazing. They are brilliant, I have to tell you. Keep up the good work. It's my daily tonic. I'm in East Lothian. You're all great, but Roughie is priceless. Isabel, I'm reading that out because you've summed it up perfectly. The big man yesterday, Hugh, on the show for 34 seconds, then could not get back on, didn't know how to work the Wi-Fi, couldn't work out the 4G, and obviously charged us the usual fee for the 34 seconds that he did contribute to the show. There you are. So that sums it up perfectly.
Roughie, 34 seconds with a guy that's been to 3 World Cups is worth it.
Yes.
I tried to tell you, I don't think Peter will agree with you.
I cannot believe I've been with you for 9 years. It's absolutely brilliant. Although, Roughie, I have to say, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but the video with you on the video, all you guys are on the video with your little insight into why you love football. But Roughie, you're just standing cool as ice at the North Bridge in the video. You look magnificent in it. It's just great. And of course, you did mention 3 World Cups in it, which I think sums it up perfectly. Lots of people just asking us about the whole situation with our national sport, which is going to be suffering. Roughie, I think you're the best person to speak about on this one. You know, I mentioned to you before, I've spoken to chief executives, I've spoken to chairmen of lower league clubs. All of them were worried about testing in the first place and how they were going to be able to afford that. Some of them were hoping for fans in. Now there's this body blow as well. It's going to be mightily difficult. Here's a question for you. Do you think we should logically look at scrapping the Betfred Cup?
Well, I think it's already been discussed through some of the full-time clubs. I think a lot of the full-time clubs are very anxious about coming up against the part-time clubs in the early stages. They've obviously got a lot more at stake, a lot more money at stake if it was to obviously development of players into their clubs just by playing some of the clubs who are not testing, and they're not testing. They knew they weren't going to test with the 17th of October, so now we have a massive problem. I think a lot of them might just voluntarily just say, look, we're going to give this a miss. We don't want to infect anybody else. We know how bad things are. And it'll be interesting over the next, it'll be interesting for the SPFL, what kind of statement they come out with now, because they're the ones who'll have to seriously look at the tournament. And for the clubs down the line, I think it's 17,000 you get for competing in this cup right at the very beginning. So that's a lot of money to clubs for the first and second division, and it's something they won't want to let go with the carrot at the end if they do get obviously up into the next round. And the money there is the main thing. But I think now you'll see the bigger clubs flexing their muscles here and actually saying, look, we're not going to play you unless you're testing.
Yeah, Ian Moore says if they scrap the cups, all the lower league clubs, Hugh, are goners.
Yeah, I mean, but there's no easy answers to all this. I mean, Darren was touching on that earlier. There's no easy solutions for Nicola Sturgeon. No easy decisions. No easy decisions for the SPFL as well. I mean, if you said, right, we'll scrap the Betfred Cup, do you then pay all the money back to the only sponsors of a competition in Scotland? When you're trying to seek a sponsor for the Scottish Cup, when you're trying to seek a sponsor for the actual league in itself, that you then turn around and say, well, we're very glad you've sponsored the League Cup, Betfred, but we're not going ahead with it, and then have to hand the money back. It's hugely difficult. I think the only compromise is the one sort of roughly outlined by Roughie there, is that I think all teams that compete in the Betfred Cup must commit to testing. And if there might be ways of helping them fund that. We know that they're getting between 17 and 20 grand for competing anyway, so that would go some way to mitigating against the cost of testing. But that would be the only way, because there's no way that you can allow it to contaminate this, which it will do anyway, Peter. It's going to go through Scottish football. We've seen that already. We've seen players who are doing well and doing everything correctly are still getting infected. But you can't invite it in the front door. You can't invite coronavirus in the doors. It's hugely difficult, and I think that would be the compromise. Only if you test can you play.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with you on that, Hugh. Tony Coleman says, guys, it's a 99.4% recovery rate from COVID. I think I'm part of the 0.6%. That's what I'm worried about on this, because people who are high risk, people with asthma, people with other infections or diseases or things that they suffer from, ailments that they suffer from, especially respiratory problems, certainly don't want to be catching COVID. The other aspect of this as well, Darren, is quite simply that the Old Firm, game is one thing. Euro 2020 is another. Off the back of that is also last season's Scottish Cup. There's semi-finals and a final to be played. The SFA were certainly hoping to bank anything from 1 to 3 million on that, and that's gone.
Peter, it's huge for the SFA. No fans coming, because we know, and no going back down the line of we've not qualified for 20 odd years, so they've not had the money of qualifications. The SFA, I don't think they'll be in a strong financial position, and I think they were desperate as much as the clubs to try and get fans back in for the Euros and for the Scottish Cup semi-finals and obviously the final. So it's going to be a massive blow for them, and it's a massive blow for the players as well, Peter, for the players and fans, because you don't want to be playing in, like I was lucky enough, I only played in a couple of semi-finals. Now, if you're maybe only lucky enough to play in one and there's no fans there, it's a heartbreak for the players, and but as we say, we have to keep on the health side of it as well. But I mean, it's a disaster for the SFA. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and the balance here is the Prime Minister, First Minister also mentioned as well, is trying to keep the economy going, trying to keep everybody, with even a modicum of hope, with earnings of something, just to keep them going. The problem is here, John Joe Kirkpatrick says English clubs rely on Sky, so it's only a matter of time before they go bust. Well, the key here, Hugh, on this is Scottish football right now is propped up by Sky, because that deal that they signed means that the Scottish Premiership must keep going behind closed doors, must keep working out ways to play those games and test, efficiently and religiously every week.
Yeah, I mean the only income that is guaranteed, apart from the season ticket money and the merchandising money. I mean, Celtic and Rangers, for example, made oodles of money from the launch from new strips under new sponsors, so that'll be welcome for them. There was no fallback on season tickets. Season as fans throughout Scottish football, not just Rangers and Celtic, but throughout Scottish football, fans have been very generous and very giving towards season tickets. But now you're reaching the stage of saying yes, but no more money can come in if the no fans are coming through. Though there's no walk-up money, there's no hospitality money, which is a huge thing in Scottish football throughout all clubs. There's no footfall money, whether it be in catering, programmes, anything else. So it's hard to overestimate, Peter, just the effect that this is having from the very top of Scottish football right down to its base in professional terms. And of course, every week that passes, the more that chief executives and chairmen are saying, well, we'll have to cut back. We can't go on like this. And some chairmen will say we just can't go on, full stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I must offer an apology to everyone who's obviously wants us to discuss football, discuss players, discuss great games and goals as well. We do obviously discuss that as well, but this is so pertinent because it's breaking. It's right up to date on what's been happening in this country in the last couple of hours, and of course what's been happening over the last few months when we were well aware of a possible second wave coming in and the R number going up, and then that has implications for football and the game. It is a business, so we have to discuss it, and a lot of people are getting involved in that. Gary McGurn says, Peter, we won't have all our doctors, ambulances, and the backup at games if there's a second wave. It is a problem. Everybody's going to have to think of these things. The biggest problem I have, Roughie, is since I met you in 2012 for this programme, there's been a time when I thought when I got together with you, Roughie, we'd be talking about football and great games and, and memories of the past and great players. But since I've met you, we've had Rangers' financial collapse, we've had a constant bickering over 9 in a row, and we've had coronavirus. Basically, Roughie, you've been a jinx on this programme, to be honest with you. there's been,
Yeah.
is there any more that you could bring to this?
No, but what I've actually learned when it goes to the legal side of any of the arguments that were discussions that we've had, that I tread very, very carefully, because sometimes you put your foot in it more times than others. So if it's legal, you tend to just give a one answer and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Of the aforementioned catastrophes and obviously the non-stop bickering over 9 in a row, Hugh, Roughie's right there. He avoids the legal stuff, and of course, more often than not, he's avoided the medical stuff. But the amount of footballers I've come across who suddenly turned into doctors and accountants was incredible over the last 15 years.
Yeah. I always remember, in the midst of Rangers administration and then into liquidation, I was always amazed at the number of accountants in Glasgow and tax experts in Glasgow who, strangely, when they were writing to you, knew everything about tax law and accountancy law and that, but didn't know how to spell. So there was there was a sort of deficit there. The way Scottish football fans could start talking about areas of expertise. The fact of the matter with the expertise, and I think the coronavirus, what is so terrible about the coronavirus is that there's a real simplicity to it, Peter. As I said earlier, it's a contagious disease that passes through contact, and there is no vaccine. Now, that's a pretty damning simplicity. You know, that's a simplicity that's going to be hard to grapple with until a vaccine comes on the scene. And I say that with no knowledge, no medical knowledge whatsoever, no knowledge of virologists, but just a simple, if A is there and you know, if there's a problem there and it can't be solved, well, you've got to wait for the cavalry coming over the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin Miller has summed it up perfectly. He says it's all Roughie's fault. There should be a Netflix. there should be a Netflix curse special. how Roughie killed our economy.
No, I just remember watching something that was 10 years ago. It was a film, and you might correct me. I think it was Dustin Hoffman, who was a scientist, and somebody else, and there was a virus came into the country, and they were shutting down everywhere, and they were talking everything that we're talking about just now. And I remember sitting there going, how ridiculous is this film? How far-fetched is this film? And now we're actually living it. It is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd never believe the way this is all panned out, and we're talking about it, and it's heavily related to football. With that in mind, there will be football played this week, again, behind closed doors, no fans there, but it's Europa League football that we're looking forward to. Motherwell will fly out to Israel to play Hapoel Beersheva. Fingers crossed on that. It's a 6:30 kickoff. And of course, the last thing that anybody wants to talk about is the shutdown, is the possibility of no fans. But first and foremost, Stephen Robinson, the Motherwell manager, had to address that very question.
Yeah, it would be a big disappointment that, obviously we'd set our hopes in getting fans in sooner rather than later. Even you take Saturday's result, there's nobody there to actually enjoy it. The game was absolutely dead. There's no crowd noise even in the background. So it's not something we want to continue, and obviously there has to be ways we try and look to change that, but we'll be again governed by what the First Minister says, and we'll try and adhere to every protocol possible.
Yeah, and that in itself is the difficulty. There isn't even an advantage, Darren, to any side if they have a home game. When you're playing in front of no fans, Motherwell will be hoping that they can take advantage of that situation when they play Hapoel Beersheva.
100%, Peter. I think when you see the games, it is, Sunday, a magnificent result for Motherwell. And listen, I've never wavered about Steven, about how good a manager he is. I think he's a top manager. He didn't pan at the start of the season. He didn't start the season well. But when you saw the game, even the game at Easter Road, I'm not going to say they battered Hibs, but they were the better team. And you look where Hibs are. So Steven's kept faith in his players, and they've a magnificent result. Yeah, they won on penalties during the week. They're through. That's fine. And a great result on Sunday. And they'll go there with belief that they can win. Their confidence is high. It'll be very hard. I do think it'll be very hard for them to go through. But they can't be any more confident than they are just now.
Yeah, I'm Darren Fields, who's a regular on the programme and contributes and knows football in Israel very well. And he's mentioned there that Hapoel are a good team, and they certainly won't be any pushover. And that's why I have a fear. I'm going to give you my feelings on how many clubs I think will still be in European competition on Friday shortly, Hugh. We can get everybody's thoughts on it. If Motherwell can replicate what they did and get off to a really good start as they did up at Aberdeen, then, who knows?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about European competition this year, Peter, has been the 90 minutes, of course, extra time and penalties if applicable, but the one-off ties. And if you look at some of the data, that's been interesting in that, yes, we know Celtic, who are seeded for the Champions League, went out. But so did the top 8 seeded teams in the Champions League qualifying went out. And it suggests that teams from lower down, are taking their chances over 90 minutes. For example, if Celtic were beaten 2-1 by Ferencváros, would they have fancied getting that back in Hungary? Would they have looked at the sense that that was a real off night and we can address things? Bloody blah, we'll never know. But the fact of the matter is that lower ranked teams have taken their chances. So there may, and I'll just use this word, may be an element of this favours clubs that are less ranked, and it gives them, that one-off chance, that old FA Cup, that old Scottish Cup thing, Peter, of just, one day, one bad day for the higher ranked team, one better day for the lower ranked team, and they go through. And Motherwell will need that, I think, on Thursday night, because I think Hartwell would be generally regarded as a higher ranked team, certainly a team with a bigger budget and more wages on players.
Yeah, and who knows, when you're looking for match winners, Darren, you'll know this better than anybody as a forward, but, Stephen Robinson was very complimentary towards Alan Campbell, but he was, again, heaping praise on Tony Watt. Now, I think Tony Watt's game and his work rate is geared towards maybe sneaking in behind defences. He always had a good scoring record as a youngster. Everybody talks about his Barcelona goal, for Celtic, but he had a good scoring rate as a youngster. And if he's fit and now he's got the bit between his teeth and he's got the manager backing him, what strikers are like, they thrive on confidence.
Of course they do, Peter. I went to a couple of games last year, a few games at Motherwell, and I was really impressed with Tony Watt. I was impressed with his work rate. Now, he's had a few clubs. And listen, I'm not putting them in the same bracket, but we spoke about Anthony Stokes last week having a few clubs, and Tony's younger, and I think, than Anthony Stokes. And sometimes you just need a little bit of reality checking, a manager that does believe in you, and you sit down and say to yourself, right, this is my time to actually knuckle down and really try and perform, get a consistency level. He's hit the highs, the Barcelona game. It'd be very hard to ever hit that high again, but try and get as close to that as possible. And going through and winning games and going through in Europe for Motherwell, that'll give him a high, that'll give him confidence, because there's no doubt, Peter, you Celtic against Barcelona, you score, you're a good player. And you don't lose that. You just lose confidence, and you lose probably a little belief in yourself. But he's a good player.
Yeah. Tony Coleman has just picked up on what you were saying, Roughie. I think, was the movie not called Contagion that you're talking about?
Something
Roughie?
like that, yeah.
It was something like that. And Tony Coleman says, yeah, I remember that movie. He says, I think Dustin Hoffman managed Hearts in that movie. So he may be just at a different level from us. But I'm sure at the end of that movie, Hearts were also relegated for starting the virus in the first place, Hugh, because they got the raw end of the stick with everybody else in Scottish football. Anyway, apart from anything else, it's one that I keep my fingers crossed, Roughie. I can't. I find it difficult to call it, if only for the fact that, as Darren mentioned earlier there on Facebook, Hapoel are a good team. Motherwell got the confidence that Darren Jackson was talking about. So I can only hope that they can get through. I have my doubts.
Yeah, I agree with Darren. They can take confidence, obviously, for that game, because it's the first game they've actually got a result this year. It wasn't impressive against the Irish side. But my only doubt in my head is if you look at that Aberdeen game, I mean, Aberdeen were throwing goals in, at least two of them, and that would have given them a bit of confidence. I agree with you. I think they'll get a harder game. I think Celtic got a really hard game when they went there. The no fans might be a wee bonus for them. Obviously, they're very hostile when Celtic were there. So I'm like you. I just can't confidently say, yeah, they're going to win this one. I think that it would have to be penalties for me. I can't see them going away and winning that game outright.
Yeah. Hugh, are you backing Motherwell?
No, I think I would say that Hapoel would be the clear favourites to me, but I'm not ruling Motherwell out for the reasons I outlined earlier. I think one-off games give them a chance, and I think in certain areas they've got people who could cause Hapoel trouble. I think Campbell's had a great start to the season. All they need to do, the defence has to play very, very well. And I've been hugely impressed with Tony Watt, as Darren was saying. I think for 15 or 20 minutes at Pittodrie in the second half, Aberdeen were reduced to really kicking lumps out of him. to stop him. I think at one time I thought very strongly that Tony Watt could be the answer to Scotland's number 9 problem. I thought in a few years he could come through and be a good centre forward for the national team. Now that's not worked out, but there's time for him still to make his mark. But happy all for me, Peter, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I've noticed you, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an old journalist technique or it's the fact that we still, what we like on here, we love our movies. But I've noticed that every time you come on the programme, it's as if you've actually taken a seat in the Titanic, because you always seem to be. You always seem to be like this. And then have you noticed that, Roughie? He always seems to sit at an angle. I'm not quite sure.
I was getting seasick.
Yeah, exactly. He does that, doesn't he? He's always at this angle here. I'm not quite sure what it is. I can't. Plus, of course, we would love to go to your flat, Hugh, and see, the surroundings, but that's been ruled out as well because of the new rules. Hugh Scott says on Facebook, "Hi Peter, Dustin Hoffman was in Outbreak, but Contagion."
Oh, that was the one.
Yeah, and Contagion was with Matt Damon. So that's more like what we have now. Hugh, thank you for that, because obviously we love our movies, but every now and then you forget the title of some of the movies that we've watched. So, Roughie, with that in mind, bearing that in mind, Aberdeen suddenly, Sporting Lisbon, I'm dealing with the clubs that I think might be at a push here under pressure. I can't see them getting past Sporting Lisbon. I think Scott McKenna's departure is a blow. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think on the evidence of the weekend there, it was very evident that you took the big boy McKenna out of that. The organisation wasn't what it usually is, And I think the team suffered, but as I said earlier, the penalty kick, the Joe Lewis, bad kick out, things didn't happen for them. So they're going there with no confidence whatsoever. And if you get into these games, you need a bit of confidence. So I don't know what Derek will be saying to the team. Obviously the form before that was pretty good. But, I agree with you. I think this team will be far too strong for them as well.
Okay, listen, I've got 2 clubs out already, Hugh. Have you got Aberdeen pulling off a miracle?
Yeah, I'll just briefly interject. First of all, Peter, the reason I move about is that because I'm a journalist and it keeps the snipers away, If you keep... always keep bobbing and weaving keep bobbing and weaving as a journalist. Don't give them a headshot. Don't give them the headshot. That's what I advise any young journalist.
You were a boxer in your younger days, were you know?
This nose would show that.
Yeah.
This nose would show that. But back to Sporting Lisbon if we must. There's little hope. On paper, of course, you're looking at Sporting Lisbon and you're looking at Aberdeen, you're saying home win, put it down, move on. If Aberdeen are looking for hope, Sporting Lisbon have been caught, with the coronavirus a bit. It destabilised their squad for a while. They're not match fit by any manner of means. Aberdeen have got a few games under the belt and we're on a good run pre-Motherwell, but so there's a glimmer there for Aberdeen, but I wouldn't put it any higher than that. And you're going to ask me the question: is that glimmer enough? No, I would back Sporting Lisbon, Peter.
Okay, Tosh Malone says Sporting are in trouble and getting McKenna out is a blessing in disguise. It's all subjective on how good you thought Scott McKenna was as a centre back, but as far as Aberdeen's hopes, are you backing them to go through, Darren, or are you suggesting the same fate as the other 2 and myself?
I think, yes, I'm with you. I am. I think after the weekend, before that, they had got themselves onto a run. They were confident, again, like Motherwell, their confidence. But I think at the weekend, they've lost McKenna, who was obviously the best centre-half, and they've taken Ash Taylor, who's come in, and they've taken him off at half-time. So I think he's having real problems with whether to play a 3, whether to play a 4, who's going to play in the back. Ross McCrory was doing fantastically well with Lewis Ferguson in the middle of the park. Are they going to have to play Ross McCrory at centre half to try and be a bit more solid at the back? People are saying, is he a centre half? Is he not a centre half? He might have to play there. So I think taking all that into account,
we might have lost him there on that little point, but I think Darren was going to. I think he was going to make the point that he shares our view on it, that they won't be there. So with that in mind, races on YouTube: Aberdeen, Motherwell and Rangers took out, unfortunately, on Thursday. Some people might think all four. Or 2 out of 4, or 3 out of 4. It's all about opinions. Give us yours on this one.
Was there going too much there, Peter? You just caught me.
Well, we lost you for a second, and as you can see, Roughie is completely out of the picture again. Did you go for Aberdeen or did you go for Sporting?
No, I think Sporting will be too. Even though I think Hugh's right, they've had the pandemic, they've had the virus and all that through the club. Their fitness will not be, but I think they'll be too strong for Aberdeen.
So I think we're all against the Dons. Sadly, listen, it's an opinion. I hope we're wrong. I hope we're wrong. I certainly hope we're wrong on Motherwell as well. And they do produce something fantastic. It would be great. Listen, just on the McKenna thing, Roughie, I noticed one of your old international teammates, Charlie Nicholas, says that Celtic should have gone for Scott McKenna. I no harm to the lad. I don't think he was. I think they've got a better player than Shane Duffy.
Yeah, you got somebody with a lot more experience. I'm sure people up at Aberdeen have been biting their fingers if that £9 million for, I think it was Aston Villa, was a true offer away last year, that they never took that. I've not bought into him at all. I know he's a good big player. He's a big, strong player. I think he gets caught far too often, balls over the top, people with a wee bit of pace. But he's young, it might be the making of him. He might go down to England and obviously become a better player, which I think we all hope for the Scotland point of view. But no, I never ever bought in he was a £5 million, £6 million player, but he might be a player, he might prove me wrong.
Yeah, I think it was 7 million was the figure they were offered, and I bet you they wish they'd taken it and bitten the hand off Aston Villa on that bid, but it didn't materialise. I have to get on with it. Listen, valuing players, what they're worth, and what they can do is one thing, but the longest running saga ever, and this is beyond COVID, by the way. Can you believe they were talking about Alfredo Morelos leaving Rangers before such a thing as COVID? But he's still there, banging in goals, never far away from controversy. But apparently, some of the headlines this morning, Hugh, have Lille going to test Rangers with just one more bid, 18 million. Now, I don't know about you, Hugh, but I get absolutely battered for suggesting he was worth 10 million. And that was a year ago. So if somebody offers 18 million, I think Rangers will bite their hand off.
They will. There's no doubt about it. The reality of it now is, of course, they will. I had a strong source that suggested that Rangers had been offered 16 million by Lille in the summer. And I believed if that was the case, they should have taken 16 million then, because coronavirus by then was coming down the line. He hadn't scored in a while. This was before the season started. He hadn't had a great end to the last season. He was palpably unhappy in Glasgow. So I think that was a realistic offer. And if Rangers had wanted more than 16 million, you could maybe have factored in sell-ons, bonuses, etc., etc. 18 million now, Peter, for me, is a no-brainer to take. Absolute no-brainer. And I honestly think there'll be people in the Rangers boardroom making that point of view pretty clear if that is a bid.
Yeah, well, the one thing about it, and this is the thing that really kind of, I think it probably busts more than a few Rangers fans' heads, Roughie, on this one. I certainly just, I just treat it with a pinch of salt, the whole Morelos, situation, because, I could rhyme off. We could have had a sweepstake on the clubs that have been linked with him. I think some journalists who've been struggling to write a story have just thrown a dart, on a big map of some of the clubs that have been involved with him. Hugh's just mentioned their 16 million. There's been all sorts of figures about this boy, and it's just been a constant circus for 2 years. If he goes, he goes. If he stays, he stays. If he stays, get your head down and score goals for Rangers, because this is just dragged on like one big giant boring soap opera, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I don't think that these kind of bids. Darren will know more about it than me being an agent, but I don't think 16 million and 18 million pound have been bid, because as you said, if they had bid that money, Rangers would have taken it. I think the teams are coming in something about 12 with maybe add-ons to get to 16 with a sell on, that kind of thing, because that kind of money cannot be turned down in this day and age. 16 million pound he would have had to have went. So I think the clubs are just trying to get him as cheaply as possible, and it's Rangers are going to make the decision what they do, and we're not privy to what's on the table. But I see players going for 20 million and 25 million, and that's when I shake my head and I go, well, if they're worth that, he's got to be a bit higher. So fair dues to Rangers as if they're trying to hold out for that 16, 18 million, but I think what's on the table is around about 12 with add-ons.
Well, I have changed my mind on it, Roughie, on the basis that I thought he was worth 10 million before he bagged 29 goals last season. Before it, I said it, I remember it. The situation now, Hugh, is picking up on what Roughie said, which is quite simply, I'm watching mediocre players go for 20 million. Now, if you take off the fact that quite a few clubs don't regard Scottish football as any great quality, and that's just a fact of life. You know, the quality in Scottish football is not great. So you take off a little bit of a percentage there. I still think they'll get a hefty fee for him, well in excess of 10 million now.
Well, the simple answer is, Peter, is they'll get what somebody's prepared to pay for him. That's the simple answer. But what clouds that is clubs are looking at. I mean, everybody knows nobody is going all out to get Alfredo Morelos. You know, people go all out to get, you know, their number one target. But every club's got an A, B, C, and D. So we'll be expected to think that Morelos figures maybe B, C, D in certain people's lists. Maybe the first choice for certain people, but they're scared of the price. The fact of the matter is that I think now for Rangers Football Club, I think it would suit them. I think the best move for Rangers Football Club is to sell Alfredo Morelos. Now that might sound daft and bold, but I really think they should take the money for he's this calendar year. He's done very little to impress. The boy obviously wants to go elsewhere. Rangers have you know have made contingency plans, shall we say. They've brought in two strikers, already had the four. Alfredo Morelos' money might give them the option to strengthen elsewhere. But I think if they get an offer, I would say above £16 million, I would think it'd be a no-brainer to take that.
Yeah, Daniel Johnson, who's a midfield playmaker from Preston, has consistently been linked with Rangers. They might use some of the money to get him. They'll need to get somebody to come in who can score goals to replace what Alfredo Morelos brings to the table. Barry Ferns says, listening to Simon Jordan the other day on TalkSport, we actually don't mind mentioning any other programme. Teams are entitled to ask for the fee. They ask for the fee they want. Man United being told to pay £108 million for Sancho. Good player, but an astronomical figure for a guy whose price is based on potential, not what he's done. Well, the one thing I would say to you, Barry, is remember, English football has totally and utterly, for years, way back since Trevor Francis, English football has created a huge imbalance in European and world football, paying astronomical, stupid figures for players who aren't worth it. And you get a situation where clubs in Europe think, well, you've got all this money with all the deals you're doing, we'll just ramp up the price and try and get more for a player. I mean, I don't know about you, Dan, I wouldn't pay £108 million for Sancho at Borussia Dortmund. He's not that good.
No, definitely not. But no, he is a good player. There's no doubt about it. He's a good player, but no 100. It's ridiculous, Peter. He's been there. I mean, I think down south sometimes someone comes in. I think they just think of a number, double it, and then times it by 3 and think, right, that's what he's worth. I mean, take the boy Ollie Watkins, just gone from Brentford to Aston Villa, 28 million. Never played in the Premiership. Never played an international. And then you look at Morelos, you look at Griffiths, you look at Edouard. playing at two of the biggest clubs in the world. But we can't look down there because we'll never get the fees that they get down there. That's not to say the players aren't worth it. Because players have come up to Scotland and struggled at the Old Firm because they can't handle the pressure. Now, I think I said, Peter, he was worth about 12 to 14. I think if they get 16, I think it would be a really good deal. But, and again, I've been quite consistent. Alfredo Morelos is a goal scorer. I think he'll score goals. He'll grow out all this moodiness on the pitch and all that. But the big disappointment, well, no disappointment for me, but for Steven Gerrard, and I think Steven's come out and said, was the condition he came back wasn't good enough for a professional. If I'm a club looking at to buy Alfredo Morelos and he comes back overweight and he's moody on the pitch and all that, I'm thinking to myself, is he going to be like that when he comes to my club? But if they look at that before and look at the goals he scored, you would sign him because he does that. He scores goals.
Yeah, just in case, for the benefit of people on Facebook and YouTube who won't be aware of this, and especially on Twitter as well, don't forget that our podcast, you will be well aware now that Roughie's had a drink of his gin and tonic there. I heard the chinkle. I heard the chinkle of the ice moving in the glass, and I thought, there's the big man. He realises the camera's on somebody else. I'll have a wee drink of gin and tonic, and then I'll start talking about medical conditions and offer my opinion on it. So that's only moments away now that he's absolutely bladdered sitting next to the captain of the Titanic. Now, there's...
Well, wait a minute. The captain of the Titanic wants to come in, by the way, on Sancho. You're bang on dead wrong about Sancho, Peter. Absolutely bang on dead wrong.
Is he
He's a real one. But I don't set transfer. I don't set transfer fees. But what?
108 million, Hugh. Come on.
Well, it'll be 108 million if somebody plays 108 million. That's a simple answer. But you said he's a good player, not a great. But this guy has set records in the Bundesliga as a teenager. Records that have, where you've got to look at the Bundesliga and see, the number of teenagers over the years that have played in the Bundesliga. And he's come up with most goals, most assists as a teenager in a foreign land. He's a teenager that's made his international debut. He's played at the real business end of the Champions League, dominated games in the Champions League. I think I'm pretty strong in this. He'll be a Ballon d'Or guy. I'm not saying he's going to be a Ballon d'Or winner, but he'll be a Ballon d'Or. He'll be a Ballon d'Or contender.
Well, he is definitely a wonderful, but we're saying, is he worth 108 million? See, the other one, and you watch it more than me, I think the boy Bellingham is going to be absolutely special.
Absolutely. He's going to be, you watch him for a couple of games, Dan. I've watched him for a couple of games. You look at him and you say, if he stays fit, he's a potential, at 17, this sounds crazy, but he's a potential guy for Ballon d'Ors. You just see his movement, his intelligence. If we go down the line of who's worth £108 million, well, we know that, how can you can only be worth what somebody hands over. And somebody eventually will hand over 108 million and 120 million, whatever, for somebody like Sancho. But what I will say, you can't define, transfer prices because they're set by the market. But what you can do is put down a quality marker. And this kid, I'm not kidding you, I've seen him live a lot of times, in the flesh, Peter. This kid makes decisions in the final third which are absolutely infallible in the final third. And I'm not talking about just taking on shots. I'm talking about not taking on shots, playing people in. At the weekend, for example, watch his goal, the way he lays on the goal for Haaland. That's top notch. I mean, this guy's a quality kid already.
Now, you've probably missed the point of my argument there. Sancho, great player that he is. My point here is the Bundesliga are looking and saying, you've got all that money, you're all daft, you're all paying exorbitant amounts of money, we'll add on a good 20, 30 million to a boy. I don't think players are worth... listen, if Harry Maguire's worth 80 million, the game's a bogey. This is what English football's all about. Sancho's a great player, fine, great potential, fine. I'm not arguing with it. You watch him. I've seen him in a few games on telly, nothing more. Is he a player at 108 million that I would think would do what a young Ronaldo would do? I remain to be convinced. But my point on this is the English football always takes the football market and throws it right out. There's a huge imbalance in football, and they've done it consistently. And what happens is the cream that you get at 5%, who actually are top drawer, the other 95% is skewed by this stupid price structure they have of paying for mediocre players. And we're looking at it and saying, I mean, Trevor Francis, we're going back to Trevor Francis, a lot of people are mentioning him on there. He was bought for £1 million. Trevor Francis scored the win on the European Cup final. Can't argue with it. Great player, but at that time, when they signed him for £1 million, do you know who the next £2 million players were? That were signed in that ludicrous period in 1979, Kevin Reeves and Tony Daly. I mean, honestly, that's what you're up against. And we laugh here because no harm to the boy, Ollie Burke and Ollie McBurney. I mean, Ollie McBurney's a £20 million player, and he couldn't lace Morelos' boots. Morelos is a 10 times better player than Ollie McBurney. No harm to the boy, but Morelos is a better player.
They're better goal scorers, and they're doing it at clubs that are expected to win every single week, every single game, a friendly. So it's the pressure of handling the pressure. And as I've said, Morelos, Griffiths, Edouard, do it constantly, every season. Do you know what I mean? So that's what makes them big players. But if you can go back to players costing money, was Cantona £1 million as well, Peter?
Yeah, but he was by the way, he was £1 million, but at that time he was a gamble because people were looking at him and saying he's a problem. And Fergie actually just threw in his name when Leeds United asked for Dennis Irwin. He said, "You're not getting him, but can we have Cantona?" And I think Howard Kendall thought, well, he's a pain in the back end, I'll get rid of him. So it was a gamble, but he turned out to be a genius. I'm going for Rangers to win against win the game over against Willem Tue. I think Steven Gerrard, the way Rangers are playing in Europe, I think they can win this one and go through. Hugh?
I agree with you totally. I think they can win as well. I think this is obviously the most difficult task to date in Europe this season, taking away obviously last season's game that was held over. So, but I reckon Rangers are suited to Europe, the way they set up, the way they can break. I believe Kent is a really important player in Europe for him as well, because I think he's another guy that can make good decisions in the final third. So I think Rangers have got more than a chance on Thursday night. Yep.
Martin Torrance says, can you answer my question? Edouard worth 30 million, but he reckons the Buffalo hasn't proven anything. There's so much bias in this country. Martin, it's not set in stone. People have just got opinions on players. There's no bias intended. If somebody thinks Odsonne Edouard's worth 30 million, great. Some clubs still got to stump it up. If they think Rangers think he's worth 18 million, and they take it, then fine. There's no bias, Martin. Try and look at things and analyse them for what they are. We're waiting to see if any club actually does bid for them. I mean, I give you this, and it brings me nicely, Martin. Thank you for mentioning it. It brings me nicely on to Celtic. They're going to play Riga. I think they'll go through. And I'm looking at it right now, and Scott Brown has been talking about, obviously, the rigours of Celtic playing in the league, but also getting ready for this European tie.
As I say, every single game is not going to be perfect, but it's about how you bounce back. And we've got a big game on Thursday. We need to make sure that we win there, and then we start looking forward to hopefully the next round.
Yeah, desperate to get into the next round. I don't think they'll have any trouble with it, Roughie. Celtic, there's something missing for me, and I certainly am not going to back down on my theory that Odsonne Edouard, is something there's something going on in the background. I'm telling you, the manager's not happy at the fact that he should have been making himself available. I think Odsonne Edouard should be busting a gut for Celtic to play in every game at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I would pin it down to maybe his agent causing the trouble more than him. Yeah, he seems to be a sensible lad, but I think he's obviously listening, as they all do at this time of the season, the transfer window. He'll be getting told this club's offering this and this club's offering that, and his head will be all over the place trying to make some kind of decision. And it's going to be a massive decision. It's going to be a massive decision for Lenny, to if he was to lose him. But again, as we've spoke on the show on numerous occasions, if that big bucks comes in, they all will find it very, very hard to turn it down. But I think they should be okay. But I'm just, some of the goals that they're losing just now isn't the Celtic of old. Maybe it's just because they're getting used to that back three and it's three different individuals nearly every second game. Lenny seems to be tampering with the team quite a lot, leaving people out, and they're all over the place. So the sooner he gets into his mind that he's best 11 and plays his best 11, I think that's when you'll probably see the true Celtic.
Yeah, thanks for that, Roughie. I was on edge of my seat there when you said the big bucks. At one moment there, I thought, wow, we're off air. It was absolutely brilliantly put by you. Alec Kelly says, Pedro, is it true PSG have a 40% sell-on clause if Edouard is sold? Hugh MacDonald.
Well, I would not know the precise value of the sell-on clause. I know they've got a sell-on clause, and it was described to me by somebody who might know as a significant sell-on clause. This informant went further and said that Celtic, would retain the 9 million they paid for him, but the money above 9 million. So say it was a £30 million transfer, the 21 million above that would be subject to a sell-on clause, which has been variously described as 40% and 40% plus. I don't know, but that is my information is there is a significant sell-on fee. But the Edouard thing there is coming to a head as well, Peter, because it's all right, Roughie saying, the agent, etc., etc., etc. The player himself doesn't. To me, he doesn't look interested. He just doesn't look interested. He doesn't. And I've noticed it from the beginning of the season that he was flitting in and out of games. There was a lackadaisical attitude towards him, about him. I wasn't surprised at all when thigh strains were coming up. We've been in this game long enough to say, wait a wee minute, thighs. And we're now talking about exhaustion, tiredness, fatigue in September. So I'm very sceptical about that. I think this is all we've all been here before. This to me has all the hallmarks of a player who wants to move on and wants to move on quickly.
Michael Banks says, Peter Martin, how can you say I saw the look Lennon gave? So Edouard, Griffiths, Brown, McGregor, Christie, Ayeti, Taylor, Duffy are for sale, and no doubt Roughie will agree with everything you say. Well, Michael, I'm sorry to say you'll never get two people who are the exact opposites. Roughie and I will play tennis tonight. I won't even speak to Roughie. That's the difference in our personalities. He doesn't necessarily agree with everything I say. In fact, there's only two topics that I think Roughie and I absolutely 100% agree on, and that's for another show. But Michael, believe me when I tell you, I can only give you an insight as a journalist who goes and interviews managers, and some managers I know better than others. I am telling you right now, and if you don't like it, tough. I can only give you my insight into it. The manager's not happy that he's not available in the right frame of mind. Call it fitness, call it jaded, call it tired, call it what you will. He's not happy. He wanted him to play against Livingston. He wants him to play regularly because he's the best player there. And with Ayeti, who's coming onto a game, he wants to play a 3-5-2. And these two players are the two players he wants to play up front, and he's not getting that chance to do it. Whether he leaves or not, I have no vested interest whether he goes or not. I couldn't care two jots. But I can see the signs that Hugh MacDonald's mentioning here. You had it with Dembele. This boy will have ambitions to go and play at a higher level. If Celtic hold on to him, Darren, beyond October 5th, the manager will go, right, buckle down and get playing regularly and scoring.
Of course, Peter. I mean, I think if you said to any Celtic fan just now, well, we've said it on the show before, there's no more signings, but Edouard's staying. I think they would be delighted with that. And during lockdown, Peter, I mean, I'm kind of caught in the middle here, because during lockdown, he actually stayed in Glasgow. All the foreign boys went back home, which is obviously rightly so. But he stayed in Glasgow because he likes it in Glasgow and all that. And I thought to myself, well, he possibly loves it here. He's idolised. He's enjoying it. He's maybe going to stay to try and get 10 in a row. But obviously, as Roughie says and Hugh says, agents are maybe getting into his ear because they know probably the agent's fee they're going to get. I can honestly say, Peter, when I was an agent, that, and this is the truth, I never told my players who was in for them or what club wanted them, because I just wanted them to play. Whether they know or not, it's not going to make any difference. So it just would mess with their head. The agents can deal with it in the background, but if you're telling them he's going to be earning 75, 80,000, £5,000 a week, £90,000 a week, it probably does mess with the boy's head. But he's a massive player, and I can see, like, there's games that I get frustrated with him because he just doesn't look interested. Like, I can remember last year when Christie got sent off at Livingston, and he's got to play up front himself, and he's not one who's going to run about and close centre halves down, close full backs down. So you were really down to 9 men because he wasn't going to do that. But on his game, he's for me, he's special.
Yeah, there's one here from Gary McGurn who says, Peter, does Roughie let you win at tennis? I have to tell you, Roughie wouldn't even let me win if I were running across the road, to be perfectly honest with you. He's one of the top sportsmen in the last 40 years. He's played at the highest level international football. Great tennis player that he is. I spent a fortune and thought I was going to beat him one night, and then he came back and trounced me again. But there will be one of these days when the sufficient amount of money that I'm going to spend on coaching, I will leather him, and I will have it all over social media. I can guarantee you that the minute I do eventually take him on a singles. The unfortunate thing is he'll be about 94 at the time. Last point then, I'm going for 2 clubs through, Celtic and Rangers. Darren, Friday morning.
I'm the same, yes.
Hugh?
Yeah, I'm the same too.
Yeah, I think both of them have got European experience to get through these 2 games.
I hope I've got 4 teams on Friday morning. Yeah. I hope Aberdeen, Motherwell, Celtic and Rangers are able to do the business. Fingers crossed for that. Listen, again, I'll give them a little mention. Well done to Ailey Conway. He's a big Hibs fan. We sent you out a little goodie. I hope you enjoyed it, Ailey. Matthew McEwen, Fiona Docherty, Stephen Harkins, Darren Fields. There's some PLZ goodies going out to you. I hope you like them. There are more people. If you like, share and follow with your friends, PLZ Soccer on Facebook, then we'll be picking names out and sending stuff to you again. We'll announce 5 at the end of this week who'll be getting more prizes. There's a whole raft of goodies that we're giving away. Join the football family, and on YouTube, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, then hopefully you will get unique video content and, of course, the show live at 4 o'clock every day. And if you can't watch it then, you can watch it a little later on. The good news is we've got some fantastic figures. We're the #1 football show Monday to Friday, and there's lots more great news coming along. Fingers crossed if we can all survive yet again. The news that we started with at the top of the show, there's stricter regulations coming in. Scottish football, we hope, can survive. Clubs can somehow get through this. Nicola Sturgeon mentioned that we will get through this. We will all look back on it and successfully get through it. I do hope she is right, and I do hope that Scottish football has an opportunity to thrive and fans get back into the grounds and we can all start talking about the great atmosphere. But it's a wee while away. So while it is a wee while away, Hugh, Roughie, Darren, myself and all our team are going to be here with you when you like, share and follow us and subscribe as well. And just to give you a flavour of why we love you following us on this programme, we thought we'd leave you with our new commercial, which will be going out right across social media. So from all the lads here, enjoy and join the football family.
Football. What does it mean to you? A city, a stadium, a colour, A team. A player.
It's the buzz you get at 3 p.m. every Saturday.
It's a volley at Ibrox.
Football's been my life.
What does football mean to me? Has to be 3 World Cup finals.
It's a 40-yard screamer in the Parc de France.
Quick Madden drags it down now. Long way out. Oh, what a goal! What a goal! What a goal by McManus!
It's standing in the lineup of the opening game of the World Cup against Brazil.
It's going to the game with your brother.
Going to the game with my sister.
Getting the football pitch ready for kick-off.
Did I ever mention who won the Scottish Cup in 1991?
It's an entertaining way to pay the mortgage.
Football, it's not a matter of life and death, but it's getting there.
Your city, your stadium, your colours, your team, your players, with your friends. Join the football family on PLZ Soccer.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit Arnold, Clark